This is Mario Andretti, and you're listening to Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with comedian and actor Richard Chassler. Rich. In this episode, we cover everything from growing up in New York, moving to LA, becoming a stand-up comedian, inspired by a chance encounter from a supporting actor in the biggest television show of its time, Family Ties, and how that affected the rest of his comedy career. We talk a lot about the Grateful Dead. Rich is a huge fan, and he's been to over 400 Grateful Dead shows. We talk a lot about that. Of course, we talk about wine, because Rich is a wine collector. I am a wine drinker, so we talked a good bit about wine towards the end, as well as his upcoming first stand-up special called A Boy Out of New York. If it's not out right now, it's about to come out. So look for it everywhere, especially at richchassler.com and also Amazon. A Boy Out of New York, Rich Chassler's first comedy special. Special shout out to his now fiancée, Sarah J. Halstead, previous guest. Thank you, Sarah, for hooking us up and making this happen. It was a delight. And this is my conversation with comedian, actor, drummer, deadhead, and grilled cheese sandwich lover, Rich Chassler.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, Richard Chassler. How you doing, man?
I'm great, Steve. Thanks a lot for having me. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, man.
Excellent.
It is 100% my pleasure to have you on. A few weeks ago, I had on a lovely young comedian by the name of Sarah J. Halstead. I guess she had a good time on the show because I don't think it was 2 days later. She said, "Hey, I got a friend of mine. I think he should be on your show." And then she introduced us, and here we are.
Yeah, I think she did have a good time. She said it was a great podcast.
So thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Yes, and thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Oh, how sweet. Richard, what I like to do is I like to sort of understand how the guests got to where they are by starting where they started. So where were you born and raised, man? Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in New York, originally Long Island. And then my family moved to California. I finished high school in California. Then I've been back and forth to New York several times.
So your family moved you to California when you were what?
12. So I did junior high and high school in the San Fernando Valley. While I was in high school, I went to a place called Van Nuys High School. They shot a lot of movies and TV shows there, and they actually shot Fast Times at Ridgemont High at my high school while I was there. And I spent a lot of time on the set with all the actors because my boss's brother-in-law was the cameraman on the movie.
Oh, rad.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I might be a little bit off on this, but I don't think I am. I want to say there's a football game in that film.
Yep.
And the team that I guess your high school was playing was Adam Carolla's football team.
Really? Was Adam on the field playing?
I know he played football for that team, and I'm pretty sure he was on the field at the time.
Well, that was actually a real football game. And the story behind that is Amy Heckerling stole that footage. They came and shot the football game. And there are some shots in that scene where there was a camera dolly set up on the sidelines on a track. And they're going past all the cheerleaders as you know, those were the actual Van Nuys High School cheerleaders.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
I love that they just stole that footage.
Well, it wound up costing her money because one of the girls who was a cheerleader came from a very conservative Christian family. And when the movie was released, the movie was anything but conservative and Christian. And her mom got very bent out of shape and apparently sued the studio for using her daughter without a release or permission in the movie. And I assume there was a settlement.
Sounds about right. That sounds Hollywood.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, you left New York when you were 12, but you still have the accent like you grew up on Long Island.
I cannot shake it no matter how I try, no how many speech classes I've gone to, no matter how many acting classes I've gone to. I am the boy out of New York, and there's just nothing I can do about it. In fact, that is the name of my new special that I just shot last month.
The Boy Out of New York?
Boy out of New York.
Nice.
Yeah, I just, everywhere I go, I don't know if it's the depth or the tonality in my voice or the fact that I actually still have a little bit of a New York accent, but, you know, I wear it like a badge of honor.
I don't know why I thought the name of that special was going to be Skinning My Proverbial Knee.
Very funny.
You said that on another podcast, which is why I thought you were going to do it.
Oh, did I? I might have said it just as a joke.
Well, you had said it as part of what you were saying. And then the host was like, oh my God, you should name your special that. And you were like, I might. And then you didn't. So that's cool.
Oh, no, that's very funny. But no, I was trying to come up with a good one. And I toyed with a few different titles, but Boy Out of New York just sort of stuck. And when I said it, my agent thought it was great. And my girlfriend at the time thought it was great. So I said, okay, that's what we're going to use.
When does that come out?
Well, we're actually cutting now, and we're hoping to be up on Amazon. I'd love to have it up by December, January.
Oh, fantastic.
That's the plan.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it should be available for streaming on the website and all that stuff right around then also.
Where did you film it?
We shot it at this really killer venue here in LA called Genghis Cohen. Genghis Cohen is not only probably one of the best Chinese restaurants in the city, but they have a showroom attached to it that was designed for music. And a lot of big people play there still. It's an amazing room. Joni Mitchell plays there, and the Foo Fighters rehearsed their last album there. And, you know, David Crosby, all the musicians up in Laurel Canyon come down and play at Genghis. It's a really killer room with unbelievably good sound.
Wow. That's rad. I think it's hilarious that you recorded it in LA, but it's called A Boy Out of New York.
Well, we thought about shooting it in New York, but it wasn't really cost prohibitive. So, and, you know, my real base is here in LA now. And, you know, I just thought that was probably the best way to do it.
You got into comedy at a very young age.
Yeah, I did.
You have been doing comedy professionally for about 37 years or something like that.
No, not something like that. I'm pretty sure that that's the number. And I'm trying to figure out if it goes to 38 or 37 this February. But I did. I started in February of 2019. Wow, a different century. Reagan was president when I started. It was February of 1986 when I started doing stand-up comedy. I was 20. I was a kid.
Wow. I was 3.
It was so different then, too, because there were no comedians. You know, the boom hadn't happened yet.
Right.
And when I started, this is going to sound crazy, but there were about 15 open micers in Los Angeles. That's it. And we all knew each other, and we all showed up at the same places every night. And it was the same 15 guys. Now you go to an open mic at the Improv, for example, there could be 100 people trying to get on stage.
Wow.
But there's thousands and thousands of people in LA who are trying to become stand-up comedians.
I was kidding when I said I was 3. I was 12, just like somebody else we know in common.
Well, you look really young. I would have guessed you were probably about 25 right now.
That is very kind, and you look younger than I do, so don't be a smartass. Why comedy?
Was never supposed to be honest with you. I'm a trained actor, and I was on a soap opera for a short period of time and got fired. I got a job as a security guard at Paramount Pictures in Hollywood. I was a security guard riding a bike around the lot. And I had a radio and keys, and I'd worked the main gate. I was this 20-year-old kid. My very first job they gave me when they first hired me was a Friday night. They called it set watch. And I was working in the dressing room during the taping of an episode of Family Ties. People who may or may not know that show, at that time, it was the #1 show in the Milky Way galaxy.
It's where Tom Hanks got his start.
On Family Ties.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that was before Bosom Buddies, in fact, where he was on an episode of Family Ties, in fact, and I was there the night they shot that one. But yeah, it was with Michael J. Fox, Meredith Baxter Birney, Michael Gross, and I met a kid on the show named Mark Price. And Mark was playing a character named Skippy, who was the nerdy next door neighbor. Mark and I hit it off very quickly. He was 17 at the time. I was 20. One night we were hanging out at his apartment, and he said to me, "My God, Richie, you're so funny. Oh my God, you're so funny. You should be doing stand-up comedy." And I said, "No, I am not a court jester, my friend. I do Shakespeare in the park. I study acting with Stella Adler. I am a thespian." He went on to tell me that small theater in LA was dead, that comedy was a very hot up-and-coming commodity. And it was really right as the boom was just starting. And so we wrote an act. And 2 weeks later, I was on stage at the Laugh Factory. Jamie Masada saw me, and I just kept going back. I got laughs that night. Like everybody, when you go on stage and do stand-up your first time, you pretty much always do well. Then you eat it for the next 2 to 3 years. And I just got hooked to the instant audience response. It was like the theater. So I just kept doing it. And I met these really awesome, I'll call them adults, but they were all people older than I was, you know? And at the time, I'm talking about like Rich Jenny, Keenan Ivory Wayans, and Paul Mooney, who was really a massive inspiration and a big help to me. And Tom Arnold was hanging out, and Wayne Fetterman was hanging out. And there were all these comedians that I just was fascinated by this art form that they were executing. And I would watch them on stage and I would just think, how do you get that good at it? So that's kind of what kept it going. And 2 years later, I was on the road full time at 22 years old.
With Mark?
Mark was the first celebrity to actually take me on the road as his opener. But I actually went on the road with a friend of mine named Steve O, who now goes by Oak. And he was part of the Howard Stern posse. He's the one who competed against Jackie Martling in the Howard Stern underwear party. And he was on Star Search. And he was staying with a friend of mine named Wayne Fetterman. Steve and I became friends. And Steve took me out on the road with him. We did 3 weeks. I got good reports back to the booker. And the next thing you know, the guy gave me like 7 weeks of work. And I was on the road. I just went.
What did that feel like? To get that call that you did well and they want you for 7 weeks?
It felt, well, I called them to try to get more work. And they actually said, yeah, no problem. We got good reports back from you. It felt like I was on my way. I remember that feeling was like, wow, I'm going to be working in show business. And I was on the road probably that first year, maybe 25 weeks, 30 weeks. And then it just kept climbing. And at one point I was doing like 40 plus weeks a year.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Who do you think had a bigger impact on your life and career, Stella Adler or Skippy from Family Ties?
Oh, I mean, it's not a fair question. It's a great question, but it's like asking who's your favorite Beatle? I mean, Mark introduced me to an art form that was foreign to me, that not only became a vocation, but a way of life, you know, and I'm still doing it to this day. Stella taught me how to think smart and how to appreciate the gravitas of the theater and raise the bar on that intellectual medium to what she used to refer to as the universal level. And she made me a whole artist. I would have to say Stella. Stella really changed my life in a lot of ways. And she did not pull punches ever. She let them land. And if she knocked you down, you were on the canvas. And she really made it important for me to understand the history of the theater and to understand playwrights and the written word and how important ideas are in art, especially in the theater, and that the words carry the ideas and that the words are equally as important. She really imparted that sense of artistic value. I hate to say it, but theatrics, and universal thought and intellectual stimulation, whereas stand-up comedy, I was out getting drunk every night, meeting girls, it was two totally, completely different worlds. But I would say Stella probably had a bigger impact on my life for sure, and my career, because she's the one who made me really love. I always loved acting. I started doing it when I was in first grade, and I acted all through school and knew I wanted to be an actor by the time I was 16. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but Stella really raised the bar on that. And she really made me an actual actor.
Were you coming up around the same time as a comedy duo named The Funny Boys?
Schmock and Vallely.
Yeah, Schmock and Vallely.
Jim Vallely, yeah, absolutely. They were ahead of me. Everyone was ahead of me. I was one of the youngest guys, apparently, at that time. Like, what I was told was that the three youngest people doing stand-up were me, Pauly Shore, and Mark Price.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Pauly, it makes sense because of his mom.
Yeah. But Mark was a kid. Mark's dad was a stand-up comedian in the Catskills. His name was Al Burney. And so Mark started doing stand-up at an extremely young age. He, because the art form was in his family like Pauly was. I was just a kid who met Mark, and next thing you know, I was doing stand-up. But everybody was older than me. Everyone. I mean, literally, there was nobody even my age. All the open micers were in their 20s and 30s. These guys I would show up at, and they were all in their 20s and 30s. So I was like this kid hanging out with all of these grown-ups.
That is amazing. What a time to be alive and in the business.
Yeah, it was different.
A couple weeks ago, I interviewed Jonathan Schmock from Schmock and Vallely.
Sure.
And he was telling a story about Stella Adler, where, like you said, she did not suffer fools, and she was trying to get a performance out of a young woman actress. And I guess she wasn't getting the kind of emotion that she wanted to. So she tried to light the girl on fire, and she was chasing her around with a lighter.
Well, when I got to Stella in 1985, he wasn't chasing anybody. Okay. I mean, Stella was already in her 70s when I got to Stella, and I was with her for 8 years.
Wow.
But there is that story, and I have heard it. Yes.
That is hilarious.
Did John study with Stella also?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, he's great.
According to him, he was in that class when she tried to set that girl on fire.
Oh, that's possible. Stella didn't like women. She was much, much harder on women than she was the men.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because she loved men. What do you want me to tell you?
That's a great answer.
She was much harder on women. And I think the reason is, really, to be honest, is because Stella was a very strong woman. The actresses in the 30s and 40s and 50s, they were these guttural, strong women, and they smoked and they spoke from their diaphragm, and they weren't like high-pitched, mousy weaklings. And Stella didn't like that at all. It turned her off in a big way. And she didn't like women trying to use their femininity in order to get over on her. Like, she was too smart for that. Stella's history is so incredible, where she came from. She just was this really powerful, strong, amazing woman. And she expected the same from women. She wanted women to own their power.
Think Betty Davis, ladies and gentlemen.
Think Betty Davis. Think Elizabeth Scott. Think Lauren Bacall. Think, I mean, the list goes on and on of all those beautifully wonderful actresses. All of them were triple threats. Everybody back then, because it was the studio system. So they all sang, they all danced, they all took acting classes, and they all were these really incredibly whiskey drinking, bombastic, high powered women. And so Stella liked women who owned that. And if you didn't, she would get very frustrated with you.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Yeah, I'm not one of the dadgum historians, patsies, dreamers, and want to be on Route 66. I'm the real deal.
That's Harley Russell, the most colorful citizen of Eric, Oklahoma. He's just one of many characters you'll meet this season in Vanishing Postcards as we motor west cross-country on Route 66.
There's so many stories on Route 66 that are going to disappear. And so one of the most valuable things I think about traveling Route 66 is to hear people's stories.
From an eating contest in the Texas Panhandle to a morning on the Santa Monica Pier, we'll experience much of 66 while exploring how its past, present, and future are revealed through the people and places you'll find driving it today. I'm Evan Stern, and invite you to ride along by following Vanishing Postcards wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back into it.
We're going to jump around a little bit.
No problem.
For some reason, you've been to over 400 Grateful Dead shows?
How do you know that?
I do my research.
Clearly.
Tell me why.
Why?
I mean, you started going at age 8.
Well, I started listening to the Dead at age 8. I had a summer camp counselor. I went to summer camp. I'm going to give a shout out to Camp Winookie in New Hampshire on Lake Winnipesaukee. That was one of the greatest places. That was the place where you learn sportsmanship and how to make your bed and how to sail and shoot a gun. And, I really learned a lot when I was going to that camp. I think I went for 4 summers. And one summer I had a counselor named Billy Goodman. And Billy was playing the Grateful Dead all summer in the bunk. And I was already playing the drums, which I'm sure you're going to get to at some point in this interview. And so I was already playing. And when I heard the music, the rhythms were just addictive. So I became an immediate fan of the music. I didn't know anything about San Francisco and the Summer of Love. And I knew nothing about hippies. Well, I knew a little bit from growing up. I had an au pair who was a hippie. But, when I heard the Grateful Dead, it was just this great music to me. And in one of the songs, Uncle John's Band, they said, "God damn." And I went, "Oh, I like this." And so when I got back from camp that summer after 8 weeks, my father picked me up where the buses drop you off. And we went into a record store and he bought me that album, Working Man's Dead, on 8-track tape. And that was my first Grateful Dead album. I was 8 years old. Yeah, that is true. I think I saw the band the first time, I want to say 9th grade or 10th grade. So I was probably 14 or 15.
And you just fell in love with the vibe so much that you went to over 400 shows?
Yeah. If you've never been, you have an opportunity next summer to catch the last tour of Dead and Company, which is Bob Weir, the 2 drummers, and John Mayer is playing lead guitar, in place of Jerry. And he's got Oteil Burbage from the Allman Brothers and a keyboard player named Jeff Chimenti. But, it's the last bastion of that hippie, psychedelic, love your brother, you're hungry, I got food, have half of my food sort of era. I fell in love with it immediately. I never met people that were so beautiful and amazing and kind and gracious and older. Again, I was a 14-year-old kid running around the Grateful Dead parking lot, It was the greatest party in the world. And the music was transformative, is transformative. And to watch it played live is there a word that means church-like?
Probably.
Because that's the only way I can really describe it. I mean, yeah, I took acid. Yeah, I smoked a lot of weed. Yeah, there was all that went along with it. But it was always, for Deadheads, it's always about the music, first and foremost, and they knew that. And you never got the same show twice. If you went all weekend. It was 3 different shows with 3 different set lists. And it was very improvisational, like jazz. And being a drummer, that was a very big appeal to me, It was very risky music, and it's super intelligent. And they play in a lot of really hard, odd time signatures. And I just being at a Grateful Dead show was like, you could breathe, you could exhale. There was no problems from regular life when you were in that parking lot. It was, give me a $1 grilled cheese sandwich. Let's go sit cross-legged on the grass and play acoustic guitars. And it was just really very much that. The spirit of it was really intoxicating.
Almost a spiritual experience, or not almost. Not almost, absolutely spiritual. Even if you weren't on drugs, the music is so huge and transformative. I use that word, but it's true. And it transcends rock and roll because it's based in bluegrass and some country and jazz and rock and roll and psychedelic. And it's so many things to feed on as a person who loves music that it's not just like going to see, a band like Tom Petty, who I love, but that's pretty much all rock and roll. You're going to go see Bob Seger. You're getting rock and roll. Zeppelin was at the time, just really hard rock mixed with blues. But the Dead were an amalgamation of so many types of music. Jerry Garcia started originally as a bluegrass banjo player. And you never knew. At one point, they would march 40 Kyoto monks on stage to chant. Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really big stuff.
Wow. So I assume that listeners, if you want to go to that show, I bet you'll run into Richard Chassler.
Well, I just looked at the tour schedule, and the tour starts in Los Angeles and finishes in San Francisco. And there's a whole lot of shows in between across the country. And I talked to my fiance about that, and she wants to go. She's never been, but, I've been playing some of the music for her, and she really likes it. And so she wants to go. So we'll probably see the 2 shows in LA and maybe the 2 or 3 shows in San Francisco at the beginning and the end of the tour is what my hope.
That sounds about right. She's like, you know what? I'd like to go check one of those out. And you're all, cool. Let's go to 5 of them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're not going to 1.
That way she gets the whole experience.
Yes. Absolutely. Because you never know what you're going to get. You don't know what songs they're going to play this night or the next night.
Right. That sounds amazing. I hope she has a blast.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing.
Well, since you didn't take her on the European sightseeing tour to propose, and instead you took her to where she wanted to go, I guess, Cancun. Did I say that on another podcast that I was going to take my girlfriend to Europe to propose to her? Is that how you heard this? For those of you who are listening, he's shaking his head yes. We're on camera. I can see Steve. I must have said that on a podcast. Wow. If you had to guess, could you guess which one?
Oh, hers.
Yeah, that's right. Hers. Drinking during business hours.
That was drinking during business hours. That was after the fact, by the way.
Yes. It would have been a terrible spoiler if it was before the fact.
Yeah, I didn't know if I said it on somebody else's podcast. So that was the plan. Her birthday was coming up. I thought I would take her to Europe and we'd go to like Italy or something. And while there, I thought I would ask her to marry me. But she didn't want to do any sightseeing. She just wanted to lay on a beach and have cocktails and sunshine and do nothing. So I said, okay, fine. And so we went to Cancun.
Club Med even.
Yes, we did. We went to Club Med Cancun. Shout out to them for doing a spectacular job. And I proposed to her at Club Med in Cancun on the beach at night. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. She said yes.
Yeah, she certainly did. And, I was prepared for her to say, I think it's too soon.
I think it's too soon. Y'all just started dating in December.
No. We met so it's been about 9 months since we met. And we did this sort of like fourth graders. I like you. I don't like you. I like you. I don't like you. I don't like him, but I think I like him, but I don't know if I like him. And so we had to do that dance for a few months. Then I guess we officially stopped seeing other people in April. So 6 months. But I'm not 25. How long do I need to know that I want to be with this person, you know?
Well, on that note, my wife and I met like on May 1st. And then like a year and 2 months later, on July 20th, we got married. We had both just gotten out of marriages. And everybody that we knew said, what the fuck? Why are y'all getting married so soon? Y'all barely know each other. Last July, we celebrated our 20th anniversary. So fuck all you haters.
That's the way I see it. In fact, we kept the relationship quiet until we got engaged.
I know. I don't know why. I'm going to ask you why after you tell the story.
I might as well just tell you. The reason why we did it was because the comedy community is very small. And my fiance is insanely beautiful and funny. And, you know, a lot of guys would want to take her out, but she really wasn't about dating comedians. And I'm not really about dating comedians either.
Yeah, because they're mostly dudes.
Because they're mostly dudes. No, but there are female stand-ups and a few, you know, some very, very funny ones, in fact. When we finally started sort of really hanging out, she was like, we should keep this quiet. I don't need the comedy community knowing my business. And I was like, and I don't need most of the guys in LA hating me. I'm already a guy that, you know, some guys love to hate. So I didn't really need more guys finding reasons to go, that damn Chassler. So we kept it quiet, and then we just sort of continued to keep it quiet. When we, quote unquote, came out, people were like, you guys are doing a skit, right? Like, this is a joke. Like, nobody knew we were even really together. I think there were maybe 2 comedian friends of mine who knew. That's it. They were very, very close friends. And her family. People in her family knew. But that was really, and maybe one of her friends or 2 of her friends, and that was it. You know, we just didn't tell anybody because, you know, it wasn't their fucking business. We figured there might be a little bit of backlash when we, you know, people found out we were together. So we decided on our wedding invitations, we want to write, guess what? We're getting married. And if you don't like it, you can go fuck yourself.
Love it. That's what I like.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. This is kind of a early question, but have you guys set a date?
No, by the way, does anybody, we haven't even said who it is.
Yeah, we've said it multiple times.
Well, it is Sarah Halstead.
Oh, shit. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it is Sarah Halstead.
It is Sarah Halstead. And everything that you said about her, as far as I can tell, is correct. She's hilarious. She's beautiful. She's smart. And she's got her shit together.
Yeah, she does. She makes me look like a 12-year-old.
I wasn't going to say that part, but.
No, it's true. I know who I am. Yeah, she's pretty incredible. No, we haven't set a date. We're thinking about next summer sometime.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This is a weird question. Why the fascination with grilled cheese sandwiches?
We love grilled cheese because grilled cheese is delicious. It's got crispy, crunchy, buttery bread. It has melted cheese in the middle, and you can dip it in lots of different things. Grilled cheese, that's like America's favorite fun food.
On another show, you talked about how amazing the grilled cheese sandwiches were in Cancun. I think at 2 different places. And earlier, when you were talking about going to the Grateful Dead shows, you mentioned that you'd be hanging in the parking lot eating grilled cheese sandwiches.
Well, okay. So as far as the Grateful Dead goes, a lot of Deadheads would go on tour, it's called, and they would want to see the whole tour. The Dead would play, 13 different cities, and it's expensive, and a lot of these kids had no money. So they would jump in their Volkswagen microbuses and sell things in the parking lot to sustain the lifestyle. Very often it would be food items. You could buy like a plate of spaghetti for $3. You could get brownies, chocolate chip cookies, some of them infused, some of them not infused. But grilled cheese sandwiches, the $1 grilled cheese sandwich was the greatest thing in the parking lot of the Grateful Dead. And I actually used to sell them.
Oh, rad.
And you'd have a Coleman stove and a couple of pans, and, you'd buy a loaf of bread for, 90 cents at the supermarket, and you'd get a thing of singles and, a thing of butter spread or whatever, and you butter and you make grilled cheese in the parking lot. And I mean, you could sell 100 sandwiches, 150 sandwiches in a day, easy. And then you come out of the show after 4 hours of dancing and sweating and tripping and whatever, you're hungry. And there would be people, just kids who didn't get in. They didn't have tickets. And there they'd be lined up, grilled cheese sandwiches, $1. Now they're like $3. But even still, a $3 grilled cheese, you can get 2 for $5, which is okay.
Boy, am I glad I asked that question. That was a great answer.
Yeah.
Why drumming? When drumming?
Man, this is a weird one. This is some past life shit. I was about 6.5, I think. And it was raining out one day and I had nothing to do. And I was in the basement of our house on Long Island. I took a bunch of things and built a drum set. I turned the little kids' table and chairs. I took the table, turned it on the side, hung 2 chairs from it like tom-tom drums, brought a rock horse over as a snare drum, grabbed 2 knitting needles out of my mom's knitting bag. And I was kicking the table like it was a bass drum. And I was drumming. And I don't know how I knew how to do that. I don't know where that came from. I'm sure it's some past life shit. My mom came down into the basement with a basket full of laundry. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm playing the drums." 2 weeks later, a guy showed up at my house named Lou Gardino. And he had 2 pairs of drumsticks and a practice pad and a book. He gave me lessons every Tuesday for a couple of weeks. And then one week he showed up with a set of blue sparkle jazz drums. I was playing drums. And by the time I was 9, I was playing in jazz clubs in New York City.
How?
He would take me into the city. He was the drummer for the house band at the biggest jazz club in New York City at the time called the Sans Souci. And so Lou would take me into the city and put me in with the band.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I was a weird prodigy kid playing the drums. And
That is really cool.
yeah, and then by the time when I was in high school, I played in a really, really good band called the New Edwardians, and I still play. And I shortly in the late 90s, I put a Grateful Dead tribute band together that we couldn't even play bars. We only played theaters. We'd sell 1,000 tickets a show.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Yeah, I drummed when we were in Cancun. When I took Sarah to Cancun in September, there was a band playing during the lunchtime thing. And I walked right up to him during the song and I go, "Do you let people sit in?" And I got up and played right with the band.
Man, you have lived many, many extraordinary lives.
I guess the only life I haven't lived yet is the guy who has a running role on a sitcom.
Well, you haven't lived the role of the guy who has a wife, have you?
No, I haven't lived the guy who has a wife. This is going to be my first time.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Back to Mark Price for a second. He
Sure.
was the star of one of the most, at the time, terrifying movies I had ever seen.
Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat. That
Yeah.
movie scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, that was a scary ass movie for its time.
For its time, yeah.
For its time, that was a very scary movie.
The only other name that I know from that movie was Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, yeah, Ozzy was in it. I remember that was the big deal when he got the movie. He goes, "Ozzy Osbourne from Black Sabbath." I know who Ozzy
we know
Osbourne
who he is, Mark. So your comedy special, A Boy Out of New York, it comes out toward the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
Yeah, I shot it September 7th, left September 8th to go to Cancun. So I was gone for over a week. And the director had another film that he has been showing and doing some stuff. So we're just starting post-production right now, actually.
Gotcha.
You know, we're just getting into the viewing and editing phase.
What is the plan? Where's this going to be available? Are you going to sell it to somebody? Are you going to put it on YouTube? What are you doing with it?
No, the plan is Amazon. And there's a company called 800 Pound Gorilla out of the East Coast. They're like one of the biggest comedy special producers in the business. And my agent's already spoken to them, and they're going to take pieces of it and get it up on Sirius XM, you know, and they get a piece of that money. I'm going to be selling it for streaming off my website, richchassler.com. So that'll be available for stream off my website. And then the plan is for Amazon to take it.
Rad. Is this your first one?
My first real one, yeah.
Why?
Because I'm a terrible businessman. You want to know the truth. It took Sarah to actually say, "How the hell have you never done this? How have you not made a special? Where are your albums? You've been doing this 30 plus years." I go, "Well, I go on the road. I tell jokes. I get paid." I never thought about stand-up as being that part of my career. For me, it was always acting. Stand-up was like waiting tables for me. You know, it paid my bills. But I never thought about immortalizing myself as a comedian. I want to be on a 1-hour drama or a 30-minute, sitcom. That's where I thought my immortalization would come from.
After 37 years, you got to feel at some point like, oh, this really is my career.
Yeah, it really is part of the career. It certainly is. It is a bullet in the gun. It really is. And I never really looked at it that way for a long time. To me, I was just like, well, I don't have to wait tables. I'm an actor, but I make a living doing stand-up comedy. You know what I mean? Rather than actually looking at stand-up comedy as a real viable aspect to my career.
So comedy was paying the bills while you were pursuing your dream of becoming a successful actor.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, people do it with waitressing and waitering or whatever. Why not that?
Well, the difference is, and it's cost me a little bit, because in order to make a living as a stand-up comedian, you have to be on the road. There is no alternative. There's people in LA that call themselves comedians. I don't even think they're comedians yet, because it takes 10 or 12 years to actually become a stand-up comedian. Just because you're doing open mics and you're getting on stage telling jokes, that does not make you a comedian. The same way going to med school doesn't make you a doctor. And it takes a long time to actually get to a place where you can call yourself a stand-up comedian. In order to make money at it and sustain yourself, you have to go on the road, because Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, these are showcase cities. Like, the comedy clubs are there, but they don't really pay much money. It's more for the industry to see you than it is for you to actually be making money. And when you go to Chicago, like if I went to Chicago to work, I'd be working like outside the city. There's a couple clubs in Chicago that do pay, like the Improv in Chicago is a road club. But for all intents and purposes, New York City is a showcase city. You're not really making big money unless you're like Sandler, Spade, my pal Nick Swartzen, who I tour with, Chappelle, Chris Rock, Bill Burr. Unless you're like one of those top 10 guys and you book a stand at a specific club, even the working headliner guys, you're getting $25 a set, 50 on the weekends. You got to go out of town. You got to take the gigs, the corporate gigs, the college gigs, the comedy club gigs in Detroit and in Ohio and Nebraska. And, you got to go to these places.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Welcome to the Player Series. I'm Gary Player, and throughout the series, we're going to take you through incredible stories, conversations with legends and current players, perspectives on current events in and around golf, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe to the Player Series on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Let's get back into it.
So I've noticed that there's a sort of an up-and-coming trend with comedians who will book a tour, but the tour is basically them renting out the whole facility and then selling the tickets and I guess keeping the money since they rented the place out. Is that something that you have considered or are considering, or has that even crossed your mind?
In showbiz, it's called four-walling for people listening. When you put your own money up for a venue and then you get to keep the whole gate. It's called four-walling. And in order to four-wall a room, you got to know that you got a fan base in that city. And you have to have something that's viable, in terms of selling. Are you on a television show? Are you in a movie? Are you, what is going to get people out to see you? Because if Joe Blow from Los Angeles, goes to a town and tries to do that, it better be his hometown. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Unless his hometown is Los Angeles, and then nobody will care.
Unless his hometown is LA. Yeah. But it's, in my opinion, it's a big risk. And the guys doing it are the guys who can do it.
Gotcha. Well, this is going to sound like a weird question, but now that you two are going to be joined matrimonially, are you guys going to tour together?
Well, we've been on the road. That's a great question, Steve. We've actually been on the road together. And, Sarah is really, really funny. And she's really good on stage. She has come out with me as what's called the feature act. She'll go on before me and do a half hour. And she actually is starting to book some headline stuff. And I have actually opened for her a few times also. And we don't really have an ego about it. We just like being together. So we like working together, and it doesn't really matter who the headliner is. People have asked us if we plan on working together like on stage, Burns and Allen style. A lot of comedians now are getting on the cruise ships.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good money on the cruise ships. But I can't go get booked on a cruise ship and bring Sarah with me as my guest and they don't pay for that at all. And because I would be working as an employee, I'm in a different cabin on a different deck, and it's a whole different, it's not like buying a ticket and getting on the cruise. So we recently have been talking about putting something together where we can work as a team, like the Funny Boys, Smock and Valley kind of thing, and go out together as a team. And when you do a cruise ship, you need to be able to do 3 different sets. So most of the cruise lines, they want you to have 1 clean 30 minutes and 2 dirty 30 minutes. So I said, let's think about this. And, we go out as a team, and then we can go on some vacations on cruises.
Is she receptive to that idea? Does that intrigue her?
It does. We like to travel. So if we get to travel and get paid to travel and get my airline miles to travel, and we get to be on a cruise where everything's for free, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And we get to perform. What's better than that?
That does sound like it. And you get to be together.
And we get to be together, which is the thing we really like the most. We like to do the same things. We're both wine people. We collect wine, and, we have a pretty substantial, between the two of us, we have a rather substantial wine collection,
You guys have off-site wine storage.
I do. I have off-site wine storage. Yeah. When we met, she couldn't believe it. She goes, wait a minute, you're not in the wine business. You just buy wine? I said, yeah. And I've got a lot of wine, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles.
Yeah, like 700 bottles.
Yeah, about that. Somewhere in that neighborhood, 650-ish. Yeah.
We only have about 200 bottles of wine.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that number was a lot bigger pre-pandemic. Let me tell you.
Well, yeah. But that's fantastic. And you've got a couple of wine fridges at home, I'm guessing? Or
we have a couple of wine fridges. We keep the house pretty cool anyway. And so we have some closets that are a little dedicated to that. And we got racks everywhere.
I love it. What do you like to drink? I need to know. What's in the house? What are some of your prize bottles?
That is something that I wanted to talk to you about. So everybody who's not a professional wine drinker or a sommelier or whatever that I've talked to has a very specific wine that they drink. We love reds. We only drink reds. We prefer cabs, big, bold, fat ass cabs. But you drink everything.
Everything.
When you were on Sarah's show, you guys were drinking like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Gris, some white wine.
Right.
And I was like, what the shit? This guy's a pro and he drinks white wine?
So, well, first of all, what's wrong with white wine? Second of all, there's a
hold on. I want to answer that question. White wine is the waitressing of wineries. White wine pays the bills.
I can't agree with that. Let me explain.
I'm just kidding.
Let me explain. And there's a story behind that podcast episode, which I'm going to divulge to you. Sarah and I did an episode of the podcast, okay, where she brought me on as a guest, finally. And the idea was to come out over the podcast and also talk about other things. But since it's drinking during business hours and since it's the two of us, I brought 2 insane bottles with me. I brought a Chateau de Beaucristal 1999 white Chateauneuf de Pape.
Wow.
And I brought a 2006 Louis Jadot Pouilly-Fuissé, both French whites. Now, Sarah loves white, okay? She doesn't love Chardonnay. I'm not a massive Chardonnay drinker, but she prefers whites now at this point in her life. And she worked in the champagne business for a long time and has this real affinity for whites and champagnes. So I brought these 2 crazy bottles with me. And we opened up the Bocastal White Chateauneuf, and it was like drinking liquid sunshine. It was so good that we drank the whole bottle. And we wound up recording like 2.5 hours. And the studio we record in only lets you record for an hour. So we lost a whole bunch of stuff.
Nice.
We even opened up the Jadot and went into the second bottle. So we had to come back and do another episode. So what you heard was actually the second time we went into the studio. And this time we said, we're not going to get too snockered. We're going to, we're going to restrict. We'll have one bottle and we're going to drink slow. And I think we drank, I can't even remember what we opened that day, but she does love Sauv Blanc, which is also the grape that Sancerre is made of for people who go, well, I like French Sancerre. Well, that's Sauvignon Blanc.
I guess the pinnacle, the one that we save and drink the least, because it's so precious. It's such precious juice. It's kind of for special occasions, is Jarvis.
Right.
That's our big one. And then the rest are local to the Texas Hill Country, which they claim is the second most visited wine destination in America, next to Napa.
Well, that's easy to find out. I mean, I go tasting everywhere. Sarah and I were on the road in New Mexico in August, and we were driving from a casino called Inn of the Mountain Gods in Mescalero, New Mexico, up to another casino in Albuquerque called the Route 66. And when we left Mescalero, I had Googled wineries Mescalero to see if there were wineries we were going to pass. And I said, we got to stop at one tasting room. One, just one, give me one. And we stopped at a tasting room, and lo and behold, she tasted through and I tasted through. And some of the wines were not great, but there was a Cab, which was stunningly good. And there was a Chardonnay that she really liked. And we bought a bottle and wound up drinking it that night in Albuquerque. So you never know what you're going to find. And I go, whenever I'm on the road, I don't care where I am, I will find wineries to taste at, which means now I have to come to Texas. I got to do some gigs in Texas. I work El Paso, and I went wine tasting in El Paso last year when I was at the comic strip in El Paso.
How's the wine in El Paso?
I tasted some pretty good stuff. Then we went across the border. We crossed the Rio Grande, went into New Mexico, and went to 2 wineries in New Mexico. I bought a couple of Rieslings. So I tasted decent wine. If I'll buy it, I bought wine in Mexico when we were in Valle de Guadalupe a few years ago. I was performing, and I brought some wine back from Mexico, and I bought wine in Arizona, and I bought wine in Georgia.
The wine country here in Texas, it's about 40 minutes outside of Austin. So it's
Really?
basically right in between Austin and San Antonio. And there's about 130 wineries.
What are the main grapes?
Oh, they grow everything because they like to say that the terroir is the same as it is on this latitude in Italy or some bullshit like that. Everything from Merlot to it's every grape. They grow every grape.
Really?
Now, they don't grow all the grapes here. A lot of them they get from like the Lubbock area.
Right.
That's the real big grape growing area, grape farming.
Uh-huh.
But they truck them all in and they make all their wines, and they have some estate wines as well. But yeah, there's about 120, 130 wineries out here.
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to come there and taste some wine.
Well, like I told Sarah, my wife and I are members of 5 or 6 here in Texas and Jarvis in Napa.
Right.
You guys make it out here. We'll take you to all the wineries, at least the ones that we're members of, because we really enjoy those wines and we like to share them.
Sounds great.
I told Sarah this because she's never had a chance to go to Jarvis. Have you been to Jarvis?
No, but I know the wine.
It is the most beautiful tasting room I've ever seen. They rented the machine that dug the channel, and they dug a series of caves into this mountain.
Nice.
What they found inside the mountain was a natural spring. So it made the perfect place to store all their wine because it's temperature controlled, humidity controlled. It's just absolutely gorgeous. We're members of that. And if you guys are ever out that way, give me a week's notice or so, and I can hook you all up with tastings there.
Beautiful.
Those tastings are the most expensive I've ever been to.
Yeah, Napa's a little out of control. I have to say, it really is, and I like all the wine regions in California. I mean, Temecula, I actually haven't been to yet, but I'm always down to drink. If it's juice pressed from a grape, I'm drinking it.
This dude wants some natural wine spirits or whatever that's called. So yeah, whenever you guys are in our neck of the woods, holler at a fella and we can set you up or we can take you.
We absolutely will let you know for sure. And when we go up north, I'll let you know. I'd love to go to Jarvis one day.
It's fucking amazing.
By the way, big shout out to Jarvis Wines. How about that?
Oh yeah, how about that, Jarvis? Give me a discount.
Make sure we tag Jarvis on the posts.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Richard, holy moly. Rich. Man, I can't believe it. It's been an hour already.
I know, and quick, didn't it?
It went so quick. You are such a delight to talk to, my friend.
Anytime you like, I'll be happy to come back, Steve. You're a real hoot, and you're really, really great interviewer. You're one of the most prepared podcast hosts I've ever had the pleasure of sitting down with.
Did you just read that?
No.
Because that's almost exactly what Sarah said.
Really?
Yeah.
No, she's not even here.
That's fantastic.
She's at lunch with somebody. I'm just telling you that. You are one of the most prepared podcast hosts I've ever sat down with.
Well, thank you so much. You have no idea what that means to me. I appreciate that.
Well, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun. If there's anything you didn't get to, I'm happy to come back anytime you want.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
Next time we'll open wine and we'll have some wine going.
Oh, that'd be interesting. The end of the show will be a lot different than the beginning. Rich, is there anything I didn't ask you or we didn't get to that you specifically wanted to talk about today? Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, yeah, we missed a ton, but it's okay. You know, we didn't talk about any of the movie stuff, working with Al Pacino, working with Helen Mirren, working with Anthony Hopkins. You know, we didn't talk about any of that stuff, but we can another time. It doesn't matter. People can find me online. I'm easy to find. All my social media is at Rich Chassler, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And my website, which is currently being rebuilt, will be richchassler.com. We pulled down the richardchassler.com about a month ago. And I'm having it rebuilt right now. It'll be back up as richchassler.com.
And once again, folks, the special that's coming out.
Yeah, we're cutting now. So I'm hoping, I'd like to see it finished early November. So let's say with any luck, December, January, we'll have it up on Amazon if we're lucky. That's what we're looking at.
Rich Chassler, boy out of New York.
Boy out of New York.
Richard, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you hanging out and letting us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. This was a blast.
Steve, this was a really good time. Yeah, like I said, I'm really happy to be here. Anytime you want, I'll be happy to come back.
You are rad, sir.
You're rad too, man.
Thank you so much.
Rad bitchin' dude.
You have a great rest of your week, man. Tell Sarah I said hi.
Take care. I absolutely will. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, buddy.
Bye, Steve.
Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.